In southern Iran, 4 kings are buried inside a vertical wall of rock. The tombs sit dozens of meters above the ground. There is no staircase. There is no path. Just empty air between the desert floor and the carved doorways where a king still looks down over the valley. This is one of 9 places in Iran most of the world has stopped looking at. A cliff that became a royal cemetery. A 5,000-year-old city that buried an artificial eye with a woman. A village that doesn't sit on the mountain. It lives inside it. A brick where a child stepped into wet clay 3,000 years ago. A desert that looks like a dead city no one ever built. A lake that has been receiving offerings for over 1,000 years. And the headlines never showed you any of them. Iran's secrets are not hidden behind walls. They are carved into cliffs, baked into brick, buried under desert, and still held inside places the world has simply stopped paying attention to. This is what's underneath. The Iran you see on a map is the surface. The Iran underneath is older, stranger, and largely intact. Some of it sits in plain sight. Some of it was buried by sand. Some of it is still actively lived in. But all of it shares one feature. The world stopped looking closely. 9 places, 1 country, and a hidden world held in rock, brick, water, and time. Secret 1. Naksh-e-Rostam, the kings carved into the cliff. The cliff is not empty. It is a royal cemetery cut into stone. 6 kilometers northwest of Persepolis in the Fars province of southern Iran, a long limestone ridge rises out of the plain. From a distance, the rock looks ordinary. Up close, the face of the mountain reveals 4 enormous cross-shaped openings, each roughly 22 meters tall, carved directly into the vertical wall at a height of around 20 to 25 meters above the ground. These are the tombs of Achaemenid kings. Only one of the 4 tombs is securely identified by inscription, that of Darius the Great. The other 3 are generally attributed by scholars based on style, location, and historical context to Xerxes I, Artaxerxes I, and Darius II. The burials are believed to have taken place between roughly 500 and 400 BCE. Each facade is shaped like a cross. The lower part of the cross is undecorated stone. The middle section carries a carved replica of a Persian palace doorway. The same architectural language used at Persepolis just down the road. The upper register shows the king standing before a fire altar, supported by figures representing the peoples of the empire. And in the center of the cross, a small carved doorway opens into the cliff. Behind it lies the burial chamber itself, cut into solid rock with sarcophagus troughs carved directly into the floor. To build any of this, ancient Persian stonemasons had to climb the rock face, suspend themselves at height, and remove tons of stone with no modern machinery. No cranes, no power tools. Only bronze and iron chisels, wooden scaffolding, and the kind of organized labor only an empire could supply. And the story does not stop with the Achaemenids. Roughly 8 centuries later, when the Sasanian Empire ruled Iran, its kings returned to this same wall. Below the Achaemenid tombs, they carved their own reliefs, battle scenes, royal investitures, the King of Kings receiving divine authority from a god. One famous Sasanian relief shows the Emperor Shapur I on horseback with 2 Roman emperors at his feet. 2 empires, 800 years apart, signing the same wall. Naksh-e-Rostam is one of the few places on Earth where you can see 2 of the great Persian dynasties competing for memory on a single cliff. It belongs to one of the great traditions of monumental rock-cut royal burial in the ancient world, and remains one of its most powerful surviving expressions. It is also one of the most misjudged sites in Iran. The world remembers Persepolis. The cliff next door is where Persepolis' kings actually went to rest, and it is still standing. Secret 2. Shahar-e-Sukta, the city with the artificial eye. The burnt city does not look like a city until the ground starts giving back its dead. In the southeast of Iran, near the Afghan border, in the Sistan-Baluchistan province, lies one of the largest and least understood Bronze Age urban sites in the entire region. The locals call it Shahar-e-Sukta, the burnt city, because at least 3 separate fires are believed to have swept through it during its long life. It was founded around 3200 BCE. At its peak, it appears to have covered more than 100 hectares, putting it among the largest urban centers anywhere in the Bronze Age world. It was occupied through several phases until around 1800 BCE, when the site was abandoned. The reasons remain debated. Changes in watercourses and climate are often cited. What it left behind is more disturbing than the abandonment. In one grave, archaeologists uncovered the remains of a woman estimated to have died between the ages of 25 and 30. She was tall. She was buried with care, and inside her eye socket sat a hemispherical object roughly 2.5 to 3 centimeters across, made of an organic paste reported to be bitumen and animal fat, covered in a thin layer of gold. It was an artificial eye. The surface was engraved with a central circle representing the iris, surrounded by fine lines radiating outward like sun rays. 2 tiny holes were drilled into the sides, threaded with gold wire so the prosthesis could be held in place by a thin filament. Microscopic analysis of her eye socket is reported to have shown the imprint of the gold thread, suggesting the eye was not purely a funerary placement. She may have worn it during her lifetime. It is widely described as one of the earliest known examples of an ocular prosthesis anywhere on Earth, dated to roughly 2900 to 2800 BCE. And it is not the only unexpected object the burnt city has produced. Archaeologists working at the site have also uncovered a board game with rules still being studied, a goblet often described as one of the earliest known examples of sequential animation. 5 painted panels showing a goat in successive positions of jumping toward a tree, and, in some excavated skulls, signs of trepanation, holes drilled into the skull during life, with evidence of healing, which means the patient survived 5,000 years ago, in a city the world has barely heard of. The burnt city was abandoned long before written history caught up with it. What it left behind in the ground suggests a population of artisans, surgeons, traders, and inventors operating at a level far beyond what most outsiders associate with Bronze Age Iran. It is one of the largest cities of its era we still don't fully understand, and most of it is still unexcavated. Secret 3. Maymand, the village inside the mountain. Maymand does not sit on the mountain. It lives inside it. In the Kerman province of southeastern Iran, at roughly 2,240 meters above sea level, a narrow valley opens between bare hills. Hundreds of small, dark openings appear in the rock, some at ground level, some stacked 4 or 5 high. From a distance, they look like the entrances to caves. They are not caves. They are houses. Maymand is a troglodyte village, where the dwellings have been hand-carved directly into the soft volcanic stone of the surrounding cliffs. Around 400 of these rock-cut houses, locally called kicha, have been identified. Some have a single room. Others have up to 7, connected by short passages cut entirely from the rock. There are no foundations. There are no exterior walls. Each home is subtracted from the mountain, not built on it. The age of the settlement is debated. The surrounding landscape contains traces, engravings, artifacts that some researchers place much earlier, going back several thousand years. The village's continuously inhabited form, in the shape we see today, is usually discussed more cautiously. Maymand is best described as an ancient, still-living troglodyte settlement with long continuity of use, and is widely considered one of the oldest surviving villages anywhere in Iran. What makes it strange is that it is still alive. A small community still lives in Maymand today, depending on the season. They are semi-nomadic agro-pastoralists. In spring and autumn, many of them leave the village entirely and move with their flocks to higher pastures. In winter, they return to the cave dwellings carved into the soft rock. The rock houses are well suited to this rhythm. Thick stone walls keep the interior cool through the desert summer and warm through the winter. Open fireplaces in the verandas slowly coat the ceilings with thick black soot. Soot that over time is said to harden the rock, repel insects, and help prevent the soft volcanic material from crumbling. The architecture is the climate adaptation. The architecture is the insulation. The architecture is the calendar. Walk through Maymand on a winter evening and you can hear voices coming from inside the rock. Cooking fires, conversations, children. Footsteps echoing across stone floors, carved long before the families who now use them arrived. Maymand is not a museum. It is a place where people have lived inside the same mountain across an extraordinary span of time. And the world, until UNESCO inscribed it in 2015, barely knew it existed. Secret 4. Chogha-Zanbil, the brick that kept a child's footprint. A king built a sacred mountain. A child left a footprint in the brick. In the southwestern province of Khuzestan, about 40 kilometers southeast of Susa, stands one of the most extraordinary religious structures of the ancient Near East. It is called Chogha-Zanbil, which means basket mound in the local dialect. Its original Elamite name was Dur-Untash, the city of Untash. It was built around 1250 BCE by the Elamite king Untash-Napirisha as the centerpiece of a new sacred city. The temple at its heart was a ziggurat, a stepped pyramid. Originally, it is estimated to have risen in 5 levels to a height of about 53 meters, with a temple crowning the top platform. Today, it stands at just under 25 meters, less than half its estimated original height. But what remains is the best preserved ziggurat outside Mesopotamia, and one of the few large-scale Elamite structures still standing. It is built of an estimated several million baked and mud bricks. Every 11th row of the outer baked bricks carries a cuneiform inscription, a line of Elamite text running horizontally around the entire structure, repeating the king's name and dedication. I, Untash-Napirisha, built this temple in gold, in silver, in black opal stone. The inscription wraps the ziggurat like a sacred signature. And then, somewhere among those millions of bricks, lies something far smaller. A footprint. One brick at the site is often identified as preserving the impression of a child's foot, pressed into the wet clay before the brick was baked and laid into the wall of the ziggurat. Some 3,000 years ago, while workers were producing the bricks that would build a mountain to the gods, a child appears to have stepped onto a fresh one. The brick went into the kiln. The print survived. The brick went into the wall. The print is still there. For Untash-Napirisha, the ziggurat was an act of empire, a religious capital meant to anchor his kingdom and rival the great temples of Mesopotamia. Construction was interrupted after his death, and the city around the ziggurat was eventually destroyed by the Assyrian king Ashurbanipal around 640 BCE. The empire ended. The footprint remained. It is one of the smallest accidental traces of an ordinary human being to survive from the ancient world, embedded inside one of the largest sacred structures of its time. Chogazanbel was the first Iranian site ever inscribed on UNESCO's World Heritage List back in 1979. Most travelers in the country still don't reach it. The brick the child stepped on is still in the wall. Secret 5. Dashti Lut, the desert that looks like a dead city. The Lut looks like a city from the sky. No one built it. Stretching across southeastern Iran, the Dashti Lut is one of the largest hot deserts on Earth. NASA MODIS satellite data recorded a land surface temperature of 70.7 degrees Celsius, about 159 Fahrenheit, in the Lut Desert in 2005. For several years between 2003 and 2009, the Lut held the title of the hottest measured land surface on the planet. These are surface temperatures, not air temperatures. But the heat is not the strangest thing about the Lut. The shapes are. Across the Shahdad region of the Lut, long parallel ridges of compacted sediment rise out of the desert floor, some over 70 meters tall, and run in nearly straight lines for kilometers. These formations are called kuluts. They are the work of wind, time, and the slow erosion of an ancient sedimentary surface believed to be the remains of a long-vanished lakebed. From the air, they look like ruins, walls, avenues, collapsed houses, city blocks separated by long, straight streets that no human ever paved. Early satellite analysts reportedly had difficulty confirming the kuluts were natural. The geometry is too regular. The alignment is too consistent. The illusion is too convincing. But there are no buildings here. There never were. The Lut is what happens when wind blows for long enough, in one direction, across a soft sedimentary surface, with no vegetation to stop it. The wind carves channels. The channels widen. The remaining material is sculpted into long parallel ridges, all oriented the same way the wind blows. The architecture is wind, the blueprint is geology, and the city is a desert that the wind made look like a memory of one. It is not the ruin of a civilization, it is the geological mimic of one. And standing in the middle of the Kuluts, surrounded by what looks like 10,000 collapsed houses in an empty grid, is one of the most disorienting experiences any landscape on Earth can offer. The Lut is a hidden Iran in a very literal sense. The world remembers Persian gardens. It rarely sees the desert that built itself into the shape of a dead city. Secret 6. Rigi Gen, the desert that traps the map. Rigi Gen does not need monsters. The ground itself is enough. In the center of Iran, across the border zone between the provinces of Semnan and Isfahan, lies a region of roughly 3,800 square kilometers known as Rigi Gen, the Dune of the Jinn. It is one of the least explored deserts in the country. For most of recorded history, caravans avoided it. Iranian explorers avoided it. Even Sven Hedin, the Swedish geographer who mapped much of Central Asia in the early 1900s, is reported to have chosen to go around it. The local belief was simple. Rigi Gen was where the spirits lived. According to the legend, to enter it was to disappear. The legend is older than any compass. The geography appears to be the reason for it. Rigi Gen sits at the meeting point of several geological systems. Giant sand dunes rise on its eastern side with steep slopes. The western side falls away more gently. Between the dunes lie shallow basins of salt and clay, kavirs, where the surface looks solid but is, in some areas, only a thin crust over softer sediment beneath. In certain zones, the ground can hold weight unpredictably. The crust can break. What lies underneath is fine, mud-like material that can trap a person or a vehicle in place and make travel extremely difficult. There is no permanent water. There are no villages. There are no roads. There are no fixed landmarks across most of the interior. The dunes shift. The horizons reset. Heat mirages distort the distance. GPS works, but the terrain itself does not give the brain anything to anchor to. Travelers who attempt to cross Rigi Gen today still do so only in well-equipped four-wheel drive convoys, with satellite communication, redundant fuel, and guides who know which surfaces will hold weight and which won't. The Jin legend was not superstition for the sake of it. It functioned as survival knowledge encoded into a story. Do not enter this place. People who enter do not come back. For centuries, that warning was the most accurate map of Rigi Gen that existed. In some ways, it still is. Secret 7. Menar Jonban. The minarets that move together. One minaret moves, then the other answers. On the western edge of Isfahan, almost outside the modern city, stands a small mausoleum that has confused architects for centuries. It is called Menar Jonban, literally the shaking minarets. The structure itself is modest. It is a tomb monument believed to have been built around 1316 CE during the Ilkhanid period to house the resting place of a Sufi mystic named Amu Abdullah. The two slender brick minarets that rise above it appear to have been added later, possibly during the Safavid era. Each minaret stands about 7 meters tall. They are roughly 10 meters apart, and they move. The demonstration is famous in Iran. A custodian climbs to the top of one of the two towers, braces against the inner wall, and begins rocking the structure rhythmically with his body weight. Within seconds, the minaret begins to sway visibly. Then the second minaret, untouched 10 meters away, begins to sway with it, not slightly, visibly, in synchronized motion. To anyone watching from the courtyard below, it looks impossible. One tower is being shaken. The other should be still. It isn't. For centuries, the mechanism was a mystery. Travelers wrote about it. Architects studied it. Engineers measured it. The structural reasoning is now believed to involve resonance. The natural vibration frequency of the two minarets is, by design or by accident, almost identical. When one is forced into motion at that exact frequency, the shared base of the structure transmits vibration through the masonry, and the second minaret responds like a second pendulum hung from the same string. That is the modern explanation. Whether the medieval architects intended it, no one can fully prove. What is clear is that the minarets have been moving like this for centuries without falling apart. The brickwork remains intact. The structure has weathered earthquakes that brought down newer buildings, and the demonstration is still performed today, although controlled and increasingly limited in frequency to protect the monument from the very motion that made it famous. Menar Jonban is not proof of a deliberate seismic experiment. It is a rare historic structure where movement itself became part of the monument's identity. It just happens to also be a tomb. Secret 8. Argi Bam. The city the earthquake opened. The earthquake did not only destroy Bam, it opened it. In the Kerman province of southeastern Iran, in the middle of a flat desert plain, stands what is widely described as the largest adobe complex in the world. It is called Argi Bam, the citadel of Bam. The site is built almost entirely of mud brick. No stone foundations in most of the structure. No imported timber for the major walls. Just clay, straw, and water, shaped into bricks, dried in the desert sun, and stacked into towers, walls, gates, and houses across approximately 20 hectares. The earliest fortifications at the site are believed by some researchers to date back to the Achaemenid period between the 6th and 4th centuries BCE, though most of the visible architecture belongs to later phases: Parthian, Sasanian, and especially the medieval era when Bam was a major stop on the Silk Road. At its height, the citadel is reported to have sheltered around 11,000 people. It survived for roughly 2,000 years. It survived multiple earlier earthquakes. It survived through the desert. And then, on December 26, 2003, at 5:26 in the morning, a 6.6 magnitude earthquake struck directly beneath the modern city of Bam. It took seconds. Estimates of the death toll across Bam vary by source, with most accounts placing it in the tens of thousands. More than 26,000 people, by widely cited figures. Much of the modern city was leveled, and by some accounts, more than 3/4 of the ancient citadel was damaged or collapsed, though estimates vary depending on what is counted and how. The reconstruction has taken decades. It is not finished, but what the earthquake did to the citadel, beyond the loss, was open it. When the upper walls collapsed, the collapse exposed older construction levels and materials that had been hidden inside the standing fabric for centuries. Earlier walls, earlier rooms. Construction phases beneath construction phases. UNESCO and Iranian heritage teams have since been able to study layers of RG-BAM that, before the earthquake, were sealed beneath the visible architecture. The reconstruction has had to confront a hard question. What exactly are you rebuilding? The citadel of the day before the earthquake? The Silk Road city of the late medieval period? The Sasanian fort underneath that? The earliest layers at the very bottom? Iran has chosen to rebuild RG-BAM carefully, using as much of the original adobe as possible, with international support from Italy, France, Japan, and others. The site was placed on UNESCO's World Heritage List in 2004. The same year, it was also added to the list of World Heritage in Danger. It was removed from the Danger list in 2013. The walls today are not exactly the walls of December 25th, 2003. They are something more honest. They are the walls of a city that learned to keep showing its underneath. Secret 9. Takhti Soliman, the lake that keeps what it receives. Takhti Soliman is built around a lake that still keeps what people gave it. In the West Azerbaijan province of northwestern Iran, deep in volcanic mountain country, sits one of the strangest sacred sites in the entire country. From a distance, it looks like a fortified hill. Up close, that hill turns out to be something stranger. The entire complex sits on a raised oval platform about 350 meters by 550 meters across, rising around 60 meters above the surrounding plain. The platform itself was built by the slow accumulation of mineral deposits from a spring that, over thousands of years, formed a natural rim around its own outlet, until the water was effectively trapped in a calcium-walled basin. In the center sits an artesian lake. Its depth is often described as more than 60 meters, with deeper points reported in technical surveys. It is fed by a continuous flow of mineral-rich water from below. It overflows on multiple sides into streams that water the surrounding plain. And it has been here, in essentially the same form, for several thousand years. This is Takhta Soliman, the throne of Solomon. It became one of the most important sacred sites in pre-Islamic Iran. During the Sasanian era, between the 3rd and 7th centuries CE, The platform held one of the three great Zoroastrian fire temples of the empire, known as Adur-Gushnasp, the Fire of the Warriors. Nearby stood a temple dedicated to Anahita, the goddess of the waters. The site's volcanic geology appears to have shaped its later religious meaning. According to some traditions and interpretations, the meaning of the sacred fire at Takhti Soliman was linked to the site's volcanic setting. But the exact mechanisms behind the eternal flame remain debated. What is not debated is the pairing. Fire associated with the earth below, water flowing from inside the rock, both held together on the same platform. Sasanian kings are reported to have come here to be crowned, walking from the eastern provinces of the empire to receive divine sanction at the temple. After the Arab conquest, the site continued to attract sacred attention. The Ilkhanid Mongols, 6 centuries later, built a palace on the same platform, choosing to reuse a sanctity that had already lasted 1,000 years. And then there is the lake. According to historical accounts and later tradition, during the war between the Sasanian king Khosrau II and the Byzantine emperor Heraclius in the early 7th century, Zoroastrian priests are said to have thrown precious objects from the temple into the lake before the Byzantine army arrived. Whether any of those objects remain in the water, no one can confirm. The lake has never been fully searched. What was thrown into it on that day or others is largely unknown. 3 kilometers to the west, an even stranger formation rises out of the landscape. It is a hollow volcanic cone with a deep internal crater, often described as around 100 meters deep. At its center, locals call it Zendani Soliman, Solomon's prison, and legend holds that King Solomon used to imprison disobedient monsters inside its crater. The mythology is colorful, the geology is more grounded. Takhti Soliman and Zendani Soliman are paired volcanic features. One lake, one crater, both shaped by the same underground forces, both repurposed by religion for over 2,500 years. The fire temple was destroyed. The Mongol palace fell. The empires that built on this platform are all gone. The lake is still there, still receiving, still keeping what it receives. 9 places, 1 country, 4 kings buried inside a vertical wall of rock. A 5,000-year-old city that buried an artificial eye with a woman who once wore it. A village still living inside the mountain that hides it. A ziggurat with a child's footprint pressed into one of its sacred bricks. A desert sculpted by wind into the shape of a dead city. A sea of sand that swallowed the roots around it. 2 minarets that move together across centuries of stillness. A mud brick citadel that an earthquake opened up to its own past. And a sacred lake that has been keeping its offerings for over 1,000 years. These are not lost civilizations. They are not buried ruins. They are not myths. They are places that have been here all along. Carved, baked, inhabited, mapped, sometimes worshipped, sometimes feared. The world stopped looking. The land kept holding. Iran's hidden world is not hidden because it is absent. It is hidden because the surface above it has been louder. This is Iran, not the headline. The hidden world underneath it.